We'll be joined by Congressman Greg Pence on this foggy Monday morning. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fabulous.
Oh, man, have you looked outside?
I have.
Is it foggy where you're at?
It sure is.
Man.
That spooks you for the day, doesn't it?
Oh, I tell you, it just like when I go outside, it's just like it just kind of hangs in the air this morning.
Yeah,
I guess
know.
summertime, huh?
Yeah, finally here. Well, I'm getting on an airplane in a few hours heading to D.C. for the week, and it's going to be the same out there. That's a swamp.
Yeah. How many people do you think will be joining you, or is it still going to be a lot of proxy votes or a lot of proxy?
Well, we only had, I think there were about 33 proxies on Friday, which it had been at 73. So it'll be interesting to see how many folks show up this week. It seems maybe the Democrats started to get the message a little bit because the Republicans did not proxy.
So it's moving in the right direction as far as what you're concerned, as far as what you've been.
I hope so. I think our job is to go out there and, be there and discuss issues and meet and come up with compromises that move the ball forward in Congress.
So what are the things going on? I know one of the things that's what we want to talk about this morning has to do with the qualified immunity. Man, I can't get talking this morning. The qualified immunity for law enforcement. Talk a little bit about what that involves and what can be done.
Yeah, let me kind of explain a little bit. Some bills were introduced last week. I co-sponsored a bill called the Justice Act. Another bill that was introduced and then was passed by a majority in the House. I don't believe the Senate will pick that up, but it has to do with addressing police reform in this country. And in my bill, the one I co-sponsored, we said qualified immunity was not something to take away from law enforcement. And let me define qualified immunity. So the Supreme Court has held in many courts, and in many cases over many, many years, have held that if an officer of law is following their training and operating within the guidelines of their city, state, county, or whatever, that they would have qualified immunity if they and could not be sued personally for actions that occurred while they were on duty. And now that does not protect them from illegal behavior or bad behavior like when we saw when George Floyd was murdered. That's murder. No one would ever be granted immunity from prosecution for that. But if someone was acting in good faith in trying to protect themselves or someone else from harm or death, and they acted, then there would be protections for them personally, and that wouldn't preclude anybody from suing the department or the FOP, but the individual would be protected because they were acting in good faith when they were executing their office. So I'm very supportive of maintaining qualified immunity. There is a movement out there in the bill that was passed that would take away and redefine qualified immunity for law enforcement. And that concerns me for two reasons. I've gone around for the last 3 weeks to about 7 counties. I've met with probably a dozen law enforcement leaders, police chiefs, sheriffs, and they told me that was the one thing that was being discussed that was very concerning to them in keeping people on the force and for recruiting new people. One chief, police chief said to me, I have a wife and 3 kids. I can't put myself at risk to have to defend myself personally in court if you take away qualified immunity when I was doing the right thing. I don't have the financial wherewithal to to do that, and I would have to go ahead and retire. I'm eligible for retirement, and I would retire. This all goes along with the defund the police conversations that are going on out there. In our Justice Act, we suggested that a commission be formed to take a look at best practices, and we suggested that we would support financially additional training for law enforcement and then provide body cameras, which are kind of long past in a lot of areas, and so that all law enforcement officers could wear body cameras. You know, I'm a guy that says 99.9% of all law officers are fabulous people. There is a small percentage out there that need to be rooted out, but I think that's best done at the local level. You know, Kathy, you and I live down the street from a policeman. I grew up with one of the sheriffs. You know, thank God in our part of the country, we know our law enforcement and they know us, and they are members of our community. But I do understand that in some of the bigger cities, there's a complete and total disconnect between law enforcement and the community, and I think a commission to study those disparities would be a good idea.
And, you know, it's interesting, too, because, you know, in a community like Greensburg, all of Decatur County, you know your law enforcement crew, you know the city police, you know the sheriff's office, the officers, because they're out there. They're out there, constantly out there, making themselves available, things of that nature. I know the city police department, several events, of course, events right now are on hold, but, you know, out there and trying to, you know, to be more visible. And, you know, now a lot of the schools, too, with their school resource officers, with the officers in place at the schools, too, there's just that connection, at least here in our community, it seems, that with a connection.
Yeah, I think in all around, I'll call it the 6th District, but generally Indiana, you know, in most communities, we go to church with them. We go to the store with them. They're coaches. They're, you know, they are our community.
So how soon do you think that legislation could become law?
I think we need to address this, and I think we need to continue to talk about it. But you know, I'm going to a little bit kind of switch horses on you here, if I may.
Yep.
While this is an issue that has come up because of the social unrest out in many of the big cities, we've still got the COVID-19 and the economy and what's going on across the country in our state. And so as a congressman, I have to be laser focused on all three legs of the stool, if you will. So the COVID-19, keeping track of and making sure that we're still doing the right thing. And, you know, us Hoosiers, we are doing the right thing. We're not seeing the surge. And so I feel real good about where that's at. And there has been the dollars sent out to the states and the and our rural community hospitals. So I feel real good about our ability to continue to manage the COVID-19. But I'm also really focused on this COVID impact and the shutdown has had on our economy and jobs and the small businesses. As we've talked before, you know, I'm very concerned that some of these businesses aren't going to open back up. Mm-hmm. They're trying to open back up, and it's just not working out because the business isn't there. And that means no jobs. And so where are we going to be? So we're keeping an eye on it. I'm open to additional support, but we have to be very, very careful about where that support needs to be and who it needs to be for. It's got to be Main Street and not be Wall Street.
So talk a little bit about where that's at. I mean, you know,
in our CARES, the first CARES Act, I get asked a lot about, are you going to pass the second CARES Act? Are you going to do more stimulus? The first CARES Act, the money was sent to the state, and unlike some states, our governor, who's done a great job, has sent some of those dollars out to cities, counties, hospitals to help support the operations, but they still have a lot of unused dollars. All the states do, because the purpose of the money sent, and it was about $2.4 billion to the state of Indiana, the purpose of that money was to fight the COVID-19. Well, we were able to bend the curve, and it hasn't been as drastic, or the volume hasn't been as great as we thought, so there's a lot of excess dollars. I'm for taking a look at, in July, at maybe changing the uses of some of those dollars. And to me, a good use may be, to shore up our rural hospitals, and also maybe to shore up law enforcement, and to take a look at maintaining jobs out in our communities. So, but again, I think we need to see where we're at towards the end of July, because we have been opening back up. I think on the 5th, we go to the final phase in the state of Indiana, and we can get back fully open. Pray to God that we don't have any resurgence of the COVID. So it's a little bit of wait and see. It's premature. I get asked a lot, will you support another CARES Act? Will you put more money out into the hands of people? And I said, well, we got to see how the first one's done and how that works out, which is there's still plenty of money there to do that.
So let's talk a little bit about the what's going on as far as with the infrastructure in the country. What's going on?
I thought, for the last 3 weeks I've gone out to D.C. We had an infrastructure committee. I introduced 14 amendments for rural broadband, which we've experienced. We really need that with telehealth, and of course law enforcement in certain areas. The infrastructure bill that was passed, I'm disappointed to say, was mainly for urban. All of my amendments focused on rural. The infrastructure bill that was passed is also a Green New Deal, and 40% of the dollars go for green in urban areas. And it was a $500 billion infrastructure bill that was more of a messaging bill and not something that really was going to get people back to work, which I believe is very critical to getting our economy back up and running. So to say I was disappointed is an understatement. I sure worked hard to get a better bill. We didn't get that done, so I'm sorry to report that it's not going to be a help getting our economy back up and going.
Talking with Congressman Greg Pence. What about the Hoosier rail crossings? What are you working on with that?
Yeah. One of the amendments that I introduced was for adding additional funding to make rail crossings safer in rural areas. But I also introduced the bill on the floor and got a Democratic co-sponsor. We would take dollars from $7,500 in grants to upgrade rail crossings in every community, in communities where the grant was. We would take that from $7,500 to $100,000. These rail crossings are very expensive, particularly ones that would provide additional safety. So I'm pretty proud that bill, I found a co-sponsor, and hopefully that's going to get to the floor either this week or perhaps the last couple of weeks of July.
All right, Congressman Pence, anything else to address this morning?
No, thank you for having me, and everybody stay cool today.
All right, thanks for the update. We'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye now.